Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm working on my 75 Chevy C10 short bed. I picked this truck up about 2 or 3 years ago now, and I've been slowly working on it. It's been sitting in my backyard, but I found the need that I needed a shop truck, and I had this laying around and thought, hey, why don't I get it on the road and get her cruising. So a little bit about the truck. I picked it up from a person out in Bowie, Arizona, southeastern Arizona. And it had been a farm truck for most of its life, and then it kind of lived in the town, and he ended up buying it off of the farm that he worked at and kept it as his personal beater. So he's had it for years. I picked it up from him about 2 or 3 years ago now, and it's got a 250 straight six, automatic transmission, 3-speed, manual brakes, manual steering, but it does have dealer installed air, which was an option back then, I guess. What I've done to the truck since I got it is obviously got it running and driving good, went through the brakes and stuff like that, and I went ahead and lowered it a little bit. I used CPP drop spindles in the front and 2-inch rear shackle hangers, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know why I zoned out on that, but that's what I did, and it lowered the truck down a little bit, but it still has a bit of a rake that I don't like. It has a little bit too aggressive rake. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but the rear definitely sits about 2 inches higher than the front. And what I think I'm going to do, because I did want to go lower anyway, is I'm going to go ahead and lower the front down another inch, and then I'm going to do a axle flip kit so I can get a total of 5 inches in the rear. So essentially it'll be a 3.5 drop, which I think will be about perfect, because I still want to use the truck for hauling stuff around and towing. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that today, and I just want to do a little walk around of the truck. I did do another video on what the current setup is, and it's on my channel right now as well. But here's the truck, and I'm going to pull her in and get started on disassembling the front suspension, replacing the springs and shocks. I went with CPP just because it was a good budget-friendly option, and I did want to do new springs in the front as well. Just because the plans are with the truck to do an LS swap in it, and it may need it. I mean, this truck's lived on a farm for all of its life, so it's got its fair share of use and abuse, and I do want to go through everything. I will go through the ball joints and stuff like that eventually as well. The end goal is to probably put coilovers on it and have the truck handle really well, but I think for a budget-friendly option right now, we're going to go with this and see how it works. I'm really excited to see how it's going to ride after new springs and shocks and flipping the rear axle, so stay tuned and I'll let you know how it goes. Okay guys, I got the truck pulled inside the shop and we're going to get started on the work. What I tried to do, but it didn't really work very well, is I tried to make a makeshift tripod out of a jack and a welding clamp that I use, but it didn't really work. I was too far away from the camera, especially with both of the swamp coolers on. I do have this one shut off for the time being while I'm recording, but it's too damn hot in Phoenix to leave both of them off. That one's going back on, but what I'm going to end up doing is I'll put the phone back here on the makeshift tripod and do a time lapse of what I'm doing, and then when I get into the important stuff, I'll pull you in and show you exactly what I'm doing on the truck. But what I've got for the truck is I picked up a set of 1-inch lowering springs for the front and 1-inch lowering shocks. They're all from CPP. I paid about $109 for the springs, and I think the shocks were about 30 bucks a piece, but don't quote me on that. I picked them up directly from CPP. Great deal, in my opinion. You can't go wrong with new springs and shocks, especially for a truck like this that's worn out and been abused all of its life. I decided to go with this route just because I am going to swap a V8 in this truck pretty here soon. Probably in the winter months here in Phoenix is just too hot, and I am using the truck on a day-to-day basis right now, hauling parts and stuff like that, running around town, but it's kind of brutal with no AC, no power steering, no power brakes, and traffic, especially here in Phoenix in the big city. So it'll be nice to have a LS swap in the truck eventually, but let's not get too far off topic. I'm going to go ahead and put the phone back here on the stand, and I'm going to jack the truck up and we're going to get started. CPP makes a great product. I do have some other CPP stuff for my other project car, and I'm really curious to see how this is going to ride on this truck. I think it'll make a huge difference. I think just getting new shocks on the truck would be a night and day difference, but I hope the spring rate's a little stiffer on these, and I may look into that. But for the time being, let's get started on this. I'm going to jack the truck up and skip the talk, and let's get started. All right, so plans keep on changing today. As I was filming this, I brought the camera in a little bit closer and the power went out. Just because we're having a huge monsoon storm. It's basically a dust storm that's going on outside, and I shot a little clip of that, so I may put that in the video, I may not. I want to keep it kind of short and sweet. But anyway, what I was doing is I got the tools that we need to remove all the suspension. Basically a pair of pliers, maybe a pair of dikes to cut the pins off. We're going to be removing the bolt for the tie rod and the bolt for the knuckle on the bottom here, and we're going to swing the knuckle out of the way. I'm not going to remove it off of the top A-arm, and obviously we're going to have to remove the shock as well. I got everything sauced up with a little bit of WD-40, and what's going to happen is I'm going to use the jack and put it under the lower control arm just to put a little bit of tension on the spring so it doesn't fly out and shoot everywhere. And another safety precaution that I will use, pulling the spring out, it shouldn't be under a whole lot of tension, but you never know, and it's better to be safe than sorry. I'm going to take a piece of chain here, wrap it around a couple of the coils, just so if it does have a little bit of tension, it won't go skipping across the shop here. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and put this thing back on the tripod, or I may just go ahead and do this and try to record it with one hand after I remove some of the bolts and show you guys what's going on here. But should be a pretty simple little gig. You just got to remove a couple of bolts, get a big old hammer to whack the tie rod end, so you break it loose, whack the knuckle there, and it should free the ball joint loose, and the spring tension should be able to push it right on out. It shouldn't be under too much tension, like I said before, but just to be safe than sorry, either get a spring compressor or wrap the coil spring with a chain. All right, guys, next step is I've got the tie rod off. I got the bolt for this off as well. For the knuckle, I've got the A-arm supported with a floor jack. A little bit of tension on it, not a whole lot. I've got a chain wrapped around it loosely, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the shock here so we can get everything out of the way. Slide the new stuff right back in. So I don't think I'll record this. It's not too hard. Just remove the bolt from the shock up here. You're going to need to hold the other end on this side and remove that bolt, and should be good to go. Here's a comparison between the CPP spring and the stock one that just came out of the truck. It wasn't under too much tension, but you still had to finesse it. I had to use a pry bar to kind of finesse it off of the bump stop, but other than that, it came out no problem. This is just a trick that I learned from an old school mechanic. It's a good safety measure, and it's a good idea to do it, especially if you don't have a spring compressor. I do recommend using the spring compressor over that method, but hey, it's old school, it works better than nothing. So now just reverse order, stick the spring back in. This part goes into the top, and this part goes to the bottom of the lower control arm. The shock as well, it shows which side is up. So that side's going to go up here on the stock mount, and then the bottom part goes onto the lower control arm. But let me get the spring installed first, and then we'll go from there. I really hope I can finish this up because it's starting to pour outside, and I really think the power is going to cut out and stay off. So I'm kind of rushing the job right now. So if anything, if it does end up doing that, I might just save everything for another day. But wish me some luck, and let's see what happens. Now we got the spring and the shock installed. Went in just fine, went in pretty easy. The spring took a little bit of finessing to get in, but it went in there no problem. It's nice and tight, sits right where it should. Same thing with the shock, sits in the factory location. I did have to file the urethane bushing down a little bit because it's a lot stiffer than stock, and these little eyelets over here have been hogged down pretty tight. So I spread them apart a little bit and still wasn't enough, so I ended up just taking a grinder to it and flattening one side just a tiny bit so it would go in there a little bit easier. Used some WD-40 and it went in just fine. Up here, the shocks come with new hardware, so you want to go ahead and replace that. They are a little bit thicker than the stock ones, so if you do buy these used, you may have to buy the hardware. I don't recommend buying used shocks, but if you get coilovers or something like that, using the stock location might not work for you, or using the stock hardware might not work for you. You might need to buy the hardware, but in this case it came with the hardware, pretty much bolt-on application, no real modifications besides this. Just had to finesse it a little bit and it fits fine. I've got the lower spindle nut on. It's nice and tight. I need to run a cotter pin through that, and I'm going to stick the tie rod on, and this side will be all done. I'm going to move on to the driver's side, do that off camera. I don't think I need to record that just because it's so repetitive. It's pretty much the same thing, but we'll see. I don't have a whole lot of room over there to set the tripod up, or my makeshift tripod, but if I could, I may as well do that. But there's less light here and it's a little bit tighter, but you'll see what it looks like. You'll see the end result tomorrow or the next day whenever I get a chance to pull this thing out of the shop. But I should be able to finish it up tonight. Storm kind of passed and it's a lot more calm now. I do have both of the coolers running, so I'm a little more comfortable in here. So it was a tough one, but we definitely got it done. The job itself wasn't too hard, but the power going out a couple of times and stuff kind of made it a pain in the neck to record everything. So I do apologize if the video is not the greatest. Also, I am pretty new to the YouTube world, and recording videos, it's a lot harder than you think. So give me some feedback. Let me know some tips or suggestions if you guys do this kind of stuff, and I'll gladly take your advice. I really appreciate you guys looking at my video, checking it out, and taking my advice. So I'd gladly take yours as well. Thank you guys, and I may do a little time lapse of getting this thing back on the ground. There we have it. She's sitting about an inch lower, looking really good. Everything went on just fine. Very easy bolt-on affair. No modifications required, so I'm very happy about that. Realistically, you can do this swap in about hour and a half if you're really not screwing around. With me recording everything, it definitely took quite a bit longer, and I did have a pretty bad storm here at the shop, so power went out a couple of times. It was windy as hell, so that made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but especially being that I'm recording everything, so bear with me. Also, this is a new gig for me, doing YouTube. I really haven't ever done it before, so never really record any of my work, so it's a little tougher than it looks, but very happy, very happy with the results. She looks good. I can't wait to get the flip kit on the rear, have the thing sitting closer to level. I don't mind a little bit of a rake in the front, and that's kind of what I'm preferring. That's what I'm going for. But looks good. I can't complain one bit, especially for the price I paid. I think everything, all the parts that I used today was about 160 bucks. Really curious to see how it'll look with the wheels I want to put on it. It's going to have some 15 by 10s in the rear, 15 by 8s in the front. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with rallies or steelies, but kind of going for a sleeper look, especially with the LS that I'm going to stuff in it. It ain't going to be nothing too hot, just a little 5.3 4L60 for the time being, but I might stuff a cam in it and do vintage air, have it more drivable and more enjoyable for everyday commuting and using it as a shop truck, because that's the end goal with this thing. Cool little shop truck that'll do good burnouts and look cool running around town picking up parts. I really love this truck. It's so cool. And what's kind of funny is I went to a local C10 meet a couple weeks back, and there was an identical twin to this thing. I mean, 75 short bed. His had a 350 in it that he stuffed in there. But pretty much the same truck, and me and him were both kind of rubbernecking at each other while I was pulling in the parking lot, and ended up talking to him, and his truck was really similar to mine. So pretty cool. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any tips or tricks or advice for me for making these videos, let me know in the comments below, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you guys again. Have a great night.